Hey guys, so this chapter, or this video, is going to cover Chapter 9, Objective 1. And so we're going to be looking at joints in the next few videos. And so we have 3 objectives that we need to cover. So we're going to be taking a look at Objective 1. We need to know what a joint is, and we're going to be looking at both the functional and structural classification. So first of all, what is a joint? Well, a joint, which is also called an articulation, it's just essentially where 2 bones meet and come together. And a lot of times it's where they move, but it's just pretty much where 2 bones meet. So pretty much every bone in your body is going to articulate with at least one other bone or cartilage, except for one exception here, and that's going to be the hyoid bone. So this is a little floater bone in the axial skeleton. It kind of sits in that throat area there, and it doesn't actually articulate. But every other area, every other bone is going to meet up with other bones at a joint or an articulation. Now when it comes to naming the joints, a lot of times you just take the 2 bones and you put them together. So like for example, sternoclavicular, that would be a joint where the sternum and the clavicle come together. Or humeroradial, that would be the humerus and the radius. Sometimes you do see joints named for their Latin names or kind of a name given to that general joint like elbow, but really it just depends on the particular joint. Most of the time you're going to see the 2 bone names put together into your joint name. Now this right here is actually one of your possible essays for Chapter 9. So the essay says, name the 2 major ways that joints can be classified and state 3 subtypes of each. So this is the first part of that essay, okay, and that the 2 ways that joints can be classified. We have structural classification and we have functional classification. Now, honestly, these are kind of self-explanatory because structural means it's going to be based on the structure and functional means it's going to be based on the function. So in terms of joints, the structural classification is going to pretty much be how those joints are joined together, okay? Are they going to be tightly anchored together? Are they going to meet up in a cavity? And then functional has to do with the movement, okay? Not all joints are going to be freely movable, so the functional classification is going to be how movable are they. And so this next portion is going to be the second part of the essay, where it says state 3 subtypes of each. So here we have our general classification, a structural classification, and then these are going to be our 3 subtypes. So remember, structural is based on kind of how they are joined together. So we're going to start off with a fibrous joint, and you can see that these are joined by fibrous connective tissue. They're going to be kind of tightly connected to one another by this fibrous connective tissue. All right, cartilaginous, as the name implies, they are going to be joined by cartilage. You're either going to have hyaline cartilage or fibrocartilage. And we see an example over here of like that disc in between your vertebra. And then the third type is going to be your synovial joint. Now back when we covered membranes, one of the membranes that we covered was a synovial membrane. And the key to a synovial membrane is that it pretty much lines a cavity or lines an area, and it's filled with fluid known as synovial fluid, okay? So your synovial joints are where your bones come together within this cavity filled with synovial fluid. Okay, and these are going to be your most common, all right? We do have examples of all 3, and we're going to take a look at those. So the fibrous joints would be like the ones in your skull. A cartilaginous joint would be like the ones in between your vertebra or the ones that attach your ribs to your sternum. You also have many synovial joints, and that's going to be like your knees and your arms, pretty much your appendages, okay? A lot of your appendages are going to have synovial joints. And so this is going to be the second part of the essay. So here you have that general classification, you have functional, and then you have 3 subtypes. So we have the synarthrosis, ampharthrosis, and diarthrosis. Now these right here, okay, they definitely kind of go along with that structural, because a synarthrosis, for the most part, is pretty much not movable, okay? Or if it does move, it moves very little, okay? So your synarthroses are going to be those that are typically held by those fibrous joints where you have that strong fibrous connective tissue joining them tightly together. Then your amphiarthrosis, amphi a lot of times means both or kind of two ways. So like an amphibian is both water and land. So your amphi are going to be kind of movable. So they have a little bit of movement, but they are going to be limited. And so these are going to be those cartilaginous joints for the most part, where you do see a little movement like in the vertebra, but you don't see kind of moving in multiple planes or directions. And then the third type are going to go with your synovial joints, and these are going to be your diarthroses. And these are the ones that are freely movable, that allow you to move from place to place and pick up your pen and walk across the floor. These are going to be the, like earlier we said that the synovial were the most common, so your diarthroses are also going to be the most common. And so a couple of questions. Which bone does not articulate with another bone? That's going to be our hyoid bone. That's that floater bone that's kind of up there near the throat area. What is the term that describes where two bones come together? This is one of those ones where you want to be careful. Be sure you read all answer choices, because an articulation is where two bones come together, and another name for that is a joint. Okay, so the answer here is going to be D. Which of the following is an example of a joint that is named for function? So function is going to be based off of movement, and the only one here that is a movement type is amphiarthrosis. These are the ones that are kind of slightly movable. Your fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial were all structural joint classifications. And then a type of joint that is joined together by fibrous connective tissue. This is a tough one here. Fibrous connective tissue would be a fibrous joint. Okay, your cartilaginous are joined by cartilage, and then your synarthrosis and your diarthrosis are both functional, and they would not be your fibrous connective tissue necessarily. Okay. All right, so now we're going to be moving on to Objective 2 in our next video, so I will see you then.